Are we live?
Nick, see you again. And we are live. Are you ready
Let's
for this?
go. I saw you like it feels like yesterday, but
I
yeah,
know.
I was super stoked to be here. I know the feeling of doing 24-hour kind of sprints. It's so funny. I was telling Vince like when I was at Animation Mentor, like, and it was usually my fault, but every time we had to submit something, I think it was on Sundays, I would do like a 24-hour session every single time. So I feel for everybody that's doing that right now.
Yeah, I remember having done many of those as well, where you just bring the coffee pot nearby and you just drive on pure motivation and caffeine until you,
Hmm.
you, you crash. So pretty good. So well done to everyone that that are still there. You still have an hour to go. So make the best of it. Um, all right, Nick. So let's get this started. There's a lot that is changing nowadays in the industry, both on the investment side of thing, production,
Yeah.
distribution. I personally, I mean, this is an industry I've been in for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of evolution over 25 years. But I would say this level of rapid change that we have right now is something, and let's say in the past, like 2 3 years, is something I've never seen before. So there's three topics that I'd like us to cover. Um, First of all, of course, IP creation in 2025. Also, the Web3 NFT space and how this might impact, how it might change the game. And if we have time a little bit towards the end, talk a little bit about AI and how that's also going to impact content creation. So before we dive into it, for those that do not know who Nick Cabana is, give us a little your 2 minutes elevator pitch. So, and let's start as when young Nick Cabana thought about CG animation, and just before the Claynosaurz era of your career.
Oh man, Dave, it's like the worst part every time. I think it's like what every artist treads. And I'm gonna try to be faster in the whole presentation too. I saw Jorge yesterday. He just like murked through his. It was insane. I don't know how many slides he had. Oh man, Nick. So I saw Jurassic Park when I was about like 6, and that like changed everything for me. I was always like I loved being transported in different worlds when I was watching movies. Like really influential movies for me was definitely Jurassic Park. I got addicted to dinosaurs, but like things like 50 Goes West, Littlefoot, a lot of like kind of epic scale movies, even Jaws, which made me terrified of swimming anywhere because I was so young. But I was super into movies, and I knew I wanted to do something involved with storytelling, movies. And at the time, I always thought I wanted to be a director. For the longest time, uh, I grew up. I was the kid that was always drawing in class. I was doing like little flip books, on like inside the math books and things like that. I was terrible at math, which I'm sure most of us in this industry are. That's why we go to film school. And eventually, I did apply to at university. I applied to like production or to the film school. It was at Concordia, and they only took like I think at the time they were only taking like 16 to 20 students. And it was like a Hail Mary. It's like the only thing I applied to because I wanted to be a director. But I only had drawings and I had After Effects stuff from stuff things I was doing on the side by watching YouTube videos. If anybody remembers like Video Copilot, I was like super into that. But my portfolio was not the right one for film production, which is like live action filmmaking. So I got rejected naturally from a really exclusive program, and it was like my plan, my only plan. And so I get a rejection, and eventually I get a message back from them like, hey, why don't you try animation? Like we have another exclusive program, it's the animation program. Your portfolio is perfect. So I was like, okay, why not? So I gave it a shot. And it's funny because it's kind of like, of course, I knew what animation was. I was already doing flip books, but I never really thought about it until the first day when I go there and you've got like the year 2 and year 3 students. They're all like on their light box tables doing like flipping. It was like old school traditional animation. It's basically like what Disney was doing. And I was like, oh my God, like I think I could do this. I could totally do this. Um, so I did that. I did about 2 years in university until I, spoiler alert, dropped out to do animation mentor because I felt that in university it was a little bit too experimental. And it wasn't really a training program for. I wanted to do like Pixar and DreamWorks, like that's what I wanted to do, like character animation. Um, and so eventually I did animation mentor. It changed everything for me. My first gig was at Sony Animation, and then also ImageWorks. So basically, at the start of my career, got pretty fast into visual effects, into the visual effects side of things and creature work, which made sense because I was like so into like Jurassic Park, right? And and then from that point on, I just kind of got deep into VFX animation. So went back home when MPC started. Rest in peace. uh, and we were like one of the first like 20 people there, like not just 20 animators, like 20 like people at the company in Montreal, which like 2 years later it was like a 2,000 person company. But I basically focused on a lot of creature work. That was my passion. Eventually, I became an animation supervisor. So my first experience supervising was at Rodeo, which if anybody knows, Rodeo is a native Quebec company, but incredible boutique studio. Not boutique anymore. At the time, it
Mm.
was. And I got to supervise Game of Thrones. I was like a super Game of Thrones nerd and fan. I loved the TV show, and it's really what kind of hooked me to go work there. And it was an amazing experience. And then after that, I worked on a slew of projects, like things like Paddington 2, the Fantastic Beasts franchise. I've worked on, I've led teams on things like Suicide Squad, so we got an Annie nomination for that. I worked on Jurassic World, which that was like such a huge moment
That
for
was
me. I
the I
remember,
made it moment.
yeah, I was such a nerd. Like I remember, like being going on the airplane on the way to Vancouver to go help. It was at Image Engine, so it was like Image Engine and ILM was working together, and I knew I was going to be on Team Raptors, and I was so pumped. And it's so cheesy, but I was like blasting the original song like in my headphones on the airplane there. And now I think about it, I'm like, oh, cheesy. But at the time, I remember like, the first time you open your Maya scene and you have a raptor in there, and it's like an official Jurassic Park raptor. And the first thing I do naturally is like grab the jaw of the rig and I just open it really quick, as most animators would do. And then, in my career, I've also worked with usually with like buddies on things like music videos. So I worked with Kate Tronada. We got a bunch of awards for that. If anybody remembers, it's the music video where he dances like with a robot. All of that was done in Montreal, like super guerrilla style. Um, and and yeah, and then eventually, COVID hit, and I was already reaching a point in my career where I was like, man, something feels weird in the industry, and something feels like, we were having a lot of chats as we do, and I know that you have as well with your team. It's like, streaming is here. It feels like we're in like a weird implosion moment. They're taking less and less risk on fresh content, um, and COVID made me very introspective, and and at the time, I kind of got into. I was very kind of curious on new technologies, and I'm just a curious personality, and I started to explore things like Web3, specifically digital collectibles and NFTs. I was less into like the whole like crypto and blockchain thing, and I was more into just the act of like collecting things digitally. And I deep dove and flash forward, years later, Claynosaurz is very much a thing and a whole like full fledged company, and we're heading towards making this as global a franchise as we can,
Yeah.
and it's been wild. So I guess I'm here to talk about that today.
All right. So
I tried to keep it short. I didn't.
it was 10 instead of 2, but I see that you did a lot of effort to skip a lot of details. So
Yeah.
well done. Um, you mentioned a little bit about back to school, and it's crazy. There's so many things that change in our industry, because if I go 25 years in the past, which means we're talking about dinosaurs, for many in our audience right now, they might see what 25 years ago, when like dinosaurs were roaming the earth. It seemed like a super long time ago, but in the grand scheme of thing, 25 years is almost nothing. But if
It's a
you
blip, yeah.
go back, let's say to the year 2000, just creating CG was insanely complicated and expensive. I mean, just let's go with education. There was no online education. There was like the brick and mortar school. If you didn't happen to go to the Gobelin or CalArts or Sheridan or some of those good schools, let's say you were in Montreal, there was, options in between decent and bad schools, and that was it. Forget about great mentoring. You could have some good mentoring, but it was if you were lucky to have a good supervisor at work. In terms of hardware, it used to be CG on Silicon Graphic. You couldn't even do CG at home. Forget about the software. They were super
Hmm.
difficult to get, rendering and all that. And in terms of distribution, you had the cinema, you had the DVD, the TV, eventually the streaming, but there was always those gatekeepers that there was no way that you could just yourself really show your work to the world. So you fast forward to today. CG became, let's say, quote unquote, easier than ever. I mean, in terms of education, there's plenty of great, affordable online education resource out there. In terms of mentoring, that's the same thing. You can find a good mentor online for fairly affordable prices. The hardware, literally, you can do CG on a laptop. There's now free software like Blender. You can use Unreal, or there's affordable monthly or yearly subscription to other software. And in terms of distribution, you have YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, uh, Steam, if you're doing your own game. But again, we're in a point now that anyone, solo creator or a small team, can create new art and really show them at scale to the world. Um, as we like to say, there are zoomies that we just started to release 2 weeks ago. It was a overnight success, 4 years in the making, but it just shows that, hey, if you just narrow down to what we've done with that specific animation, yes, there's been a lot of work behind, but if you just look at this, it's still just a 10-second animated loop with a cute character, and it can potentially reach millions of people. So I would say the challenge with that now is becoming like, how do you stand out in the crowd of all of the content that's going to be released? And this is where, to me, it leads to Claynosaurz, because when I saw Claynosaurz, I want to say 2 years ago, I might be off a little bit, but the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that's different, that's fresh, that's new. And not just the content itself, but just how it was distributed and how it felt as a package, and how this piece of internet entertainment reached me wherever I was when I saw that, probably on the bus or um, whatever. So um, I know, Nick, that you have a little presentation. So I would say, to anyone that are either familiar with Claynosaurz or not, giving us a little bit of an overview of what Claynosaurz is, which might help us to dive a bit deeper into it and say, hey, what made it the success that it is today?
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks for the intro. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Wicked. Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know Klanos, if you don't, look up the name. The first thing you'll find is probably our Instagram or our TikTok. Um, it's a creator first brand. Built by a bunch of artists in the industry. We started this thing basically like in, I would say, about 2021 is when we really started to think about building this thing. So it's been a little bit of a journey, but it's essentially a character driven IP or brand, and we leverage, of course, animation and content, but we also leverage emerging technologies to build what we hope to be a global franchise through community, which is a big word for us, through media and through gaming, through merchandise. We essentially meet the audiences where they're at, which is a big piece of what I guess Dave is talking about, what we'll talk about here. Um, and um, Essentially, we also use digital collectibles to create community and glue everything together. So all the experiences that we create, whether it's the content, whether it's events in person, whether it's the games that we're starting to build, everything we do is kind of tied to digital collectibles, and I'll get into that later. But it's a really important piece of our puzzle, and we use Web3 to do that, and NFTs, which I know for the animation industry is definitely maybe a little bit of an alien word or a weird word, but it's actually incredibly empowering for artists, and it's so funny because like Dave and I have so many conversations about this. If you guys don't know the context, both of our studios are like a stone's throw away from each other. So we do have a lot of talks about these, and we love the Agora team. Um, but here's the story. So we were a bunch of artists in 2021 that slowly came together. I recruited a bunch of friends. I was working with people at Framestore, but we had people from all over the place, whether it was like ILM or Sony or Illumination, stuff like that. And all of us kind of had these like big dreams of building a brand for ourselves. We were always doing it, which I'm sure a lot of people here can relate. We were always doing it for the big guys or for other companies without much control, but above everything else, without much reward, for the artists. The thing about building brands for other companies, or even attempting to build a brand for yourself, is very rare that you hold a big piece of the pie for yourself. Or your own studio. Oftentimes, the percentages and everything else is really, really small. Um, and so that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to build a brand for ourselves. We were also really like crypto curious. We were also very curious about NFTs. So a lot of us that were like super nerdy about new technology, but also big collectors, because we're animators, we collect shit all the time. Our desks are full of just random stuff. I was like, I have so many pop Funkos, and like I have like most of the, if you guys remember like Disney Infinity, like all the little like, the little like Darth Vaders and Lilo and Stitch. I have like those. So I'm a hoarder. Um, and there's no reason not to do that digitally, right? And so we were asking ourselves like, man, that's new tech. This is interesting. Of course, we were reading the news of like, you could sell digital collectibles and all that stuff. So we kind of went into what we call the trenches. We deep dove. We started collecting digitals ourselves, and we started to understand that you're creating community or pockets of community uh, around these digital collectibles, around these brands that are formed by selling these collectibles, um, and so that's what I'm going to get into in in 2022, in 2021 basically, like the our first 10,000 unit collectibles was released, and Claynosaurz was officially born. We were building this stuff for a really long time, about 7 months before we released our first collectibles. And I think the easiest way for you guys to understand this is it's a little bit like a Kickstarter campaign, or a social media campaign where you start your accounts. You start to build a community of people that are kind of curious or interested in this stuff. You show a lot of making of, you show the process of what you're building until you're ready to release your first product. And what's really cool is when you sell your first digital collectibles as an artist, or as a company, or whatever, you can monetize your early development cycle, which means that you're selling the digital collectibles, which are essentially just the characters, but you don't have to have like the whole world built. You don't have to have a huge short film or a whole pilot episode built out, right? To start actually, making money, and then you can use that money to allocate resources to the right things to grow the brand. So social media, building products, building games, all that kind of stuff. But back to the collectibles. Again, we were super nerdy. We deep dove like in the ecosystem on what was working, what wasn't. But we also looked at like stuff in the real world that was really powerful for collectors. A programmatic approach. So if anybody knows like Miffy, they do that really, really well. It's Miffy. But if you look at recently, like you can't avoid it. It's all over social media right now. But Labubu, yeah, or Pop Mart, or even Pop Vinyl, or Beanie Babies. There's very distinct collector strategies, and we wanted to create um, like a gamified collector's experience with our dinosaurs. So what we did is we released an initial 6 species that eventually became 9 species total for our Genesis collections, and we wanted, for the first time in history, basically, to give people the opportunity to collect different cycles, which had never been done. So what's very cool about a digital collectible, on top of the fact that you can trade it anywhere, is that it's digital. So instead of just being a physical toy that doesn't move, it can evolve over time. It could be animated. There's a lot of value add for animators there, actually, or even for from a product POV, because it can kind of like be perpetual. It doesn't have like wear and tear. It could be it can have motion, all that fun stuff, and you have a distribution network that overnight is global because it's online. And we focused on different face poses and emotions as a collectible trait. We focused on different colors. We focused on 10 like really archetype patterns that became essentially sub brands, and sub communities were created around those patterns. So now we have community members, or groups of community all over the world that are super collectors that will collect one specific trait and create a community around that, which is really really cool. So for example, bored Rexes, like the Rexes that just look bored all the time, there's a community around that, and those are the dinosaurs that they collect. And the really cool thing about that is we can foster those call them guilds, right? Because that's a really easy thing to understand. We can foster those guilds, create events for them, or empower them to create their own events around the world, and all of that stuff creates a more airtight community. And what are we doing really? We're pre-packaging our brand with an early fan base that is active, that is incentivized to evangelize the brand, that is having fun with it and creating memories around it. And of course, as a brand, you're able to monetize the collectibles a little bit so that you can continue to build. Um, and there's this assumption that as you build the brand, the collectibles will see more and more value um, over time, just because the brand grows provenance. So there's an incentive loop there as well for those early fans, on top of all the crazy things that Web3 can offer.
Yeah.
So I'm
So,
gonna pause there.
Nick,
Yeah, go for it.
yeah, if you come back to the previous slide, because I think
Yeah,
that's
let's go.
a perfect timing to address the elephant in the room. And I know that you had the question often, but for many, um, NFTs are just a way too expensive JPEG or
Yeah,
MP4 or a video file. Most understand that the collectible aspect, if you have something that is physical, but when it comes to digital, why not screen capture the image, or why not just screen capture the video? And look, I also have it and I paid nothing for it.
yeah,
Don't go too deep in the rabbit hole of of all of the technology that is involved. But for anyone that would ask himself, what is the point? Why should I invest, let's say, $100 to have this video compared to just screen grabbing it and
yeah.
having on my laptop? What's the difference here?
That's such a good question. On a psychological level and just social level, if you track the history of collectibles, very easy to explain. I won't get too much into the tech, other than mention that you actually own the piece. It is not just the piece of art, but that NFT, which is just a tech layer. It's like a contract. Is also a digital passport. It's like a super account and an access into everything we do. And the only way to access certain things and certain reward loops that we have is to have that piece. So that's just like the technology dumbed down as best as I can. Um, do not underestimate the power of ownership. For example, someone that walks around with I don't know, like a Prada purse or something, right? Um, for sure, you can have black market cheap ones that cost like $5, right? That are fakes. but to certain people, having the real one actually matters. It's what it makes them feel. It's the fact that they are collectors and they actually want the real one. It's a conversation piece. It's all sorts of things. But the example of I can save the JPEG, of course you can. That's fine. I think that the best example I can give is, let's say like you flash forward 2 years into the future, and by the way, hotels already have NFTs like in their lobbies, um, and you have like a painting from an artist that you love, right? And maybe it costs like $500. Not a crazy amount, and it's the price of what like a real print would have cost. Um, and you have that in your living room, and you have the file, and you can trade it however you want. You can you can send it to friends, whatever, but you have the actual contract that says that is the real piece. It's a layer of authentication, which by the way even museums don't have. In a museum environment, you have to say, yes, trust me, it's the Mona Lisa, because some professional says it is. There's no pure authentication layer.
Yeah.
In digital, you have that, which means I don't care if you've saved it. That's great. Like, how many people take pictures of the Mona Lisa? It's like, it's good marketing for the Mona Lisa. But if you were to have the real piece, I feel something and I know I have it. And actually, I'm the only person in the world that could sell it,
Yeah.
on a secondary market.
So something that you mentioned that is super interesting is that it's the image or the video is just represent what is the digital
Yeah.
contract that is behind it. So it's almost like the car key. I mean, yes, you have the car key in your hand, but it's really the car, because if you just have the key, there's like no point of just having a key. So if we say that what you're really going for is the car, which is the digital contract, can you give specific example of someone that would buy a Claynosaurz, what the car would be, what they would actually get in return more than an image or a video?
Yeah, so in the press, I'm going to get into some of that stuff, but essentially, there's so many things that you can do because it's a digital collectible. Now, at any point in time, that, like you say, it's a contract, and we can find that unit anywhere in the digital sphere, right? And it's completely transparent. So instead of tracking users, we track the collectibles themselves, and we can allocate. If you consider the collectible itself like a Claynosaur, almost like a inventory bag, like a digital inventory bag, we can send stuff to that bag, and that stuff can be tokens, which oftentimes do have a certain financial layer to it, and other companies can send tokens to that bag. We can send other digital collectibles, which for a collector is a big part of the incentive, because you hold one collectible and over time you're farming extra collectibles. Some of them are rare, some of them are not, some of them you had to be there at the right place, but we can do that. We can also token gate access, such that the only way to access a certain part of our website, or the only way to access an exclusive event that we throw somewhere in the world, is by owning your ticket is essentially the Claynosaur. And there's so many other things that we can do. If you log into our eShop, and you have a Claynosaur in your digital like inventory bag, then you get specific discounts. Sometimes you might be able to get a free exclusive merch piece. And right now I'm keeping it very surface level, but there's a slew of crazy things that you can do, because not only are you collecting the collectible, but because it's digital and it's decentralized, and it's trackable anywhere in the world, it could receive an allocation of a multitude of rewards, and it could be used as a login.
Yeah, awesome. All right, moving on. Thanks for addressing this.
That's a little tangent. So I want to get into like Web3 as best I can, and I know this sounds kind of like some of you guys might have heard it. Some of you guys in the animation space might be like, ah, NFTs. Like I've read the news. NFTs is incredibly empowering to artists, because you can, for the first time in history, digitally, you can actually sell your pieces online without needing to go through a gallery system. You can own everything, and you can keep royalties. But Web3 is just kind of a word for the next evolution of the internet. And to put it in perspective, Web 1, that was like the 1990s to to 2000 roughly. That's the early internet. And for anyone that was around at that time, if you're old enough, uh, at that time you can only view content. You could read stuff. You could search maybe Yahoo, and that's like literally all you could do. Like it was basically a glorified Wikipedia. That was the internet. And keep in mind that it was considered a gimmick at the time. Like nobody thought the internet. There was thought leaders that were saying the internet is not going to last, right? It's a
It was
glorified
called the
encyclopedia.
information highway. This is
Yeah,
how
it's
they
an
called it at first.
exactly. And then Web 2 came along, and Web 2 was now you have new tools. Now you're not just reading, you can write. You can interact, you can post, you can create, you can comment, you can upload stuff. You get social media that so this is like 2000 plus. Social media starts showing up. There's MySpace, but eventually it's refined and it's Facebook, and you've got YouTube and Instagram. You can create content, you can upload it. However, all of it is centralized and controlled by a few companies. And owned by the platforms. The platforms control your data, they control identity, they control reach, which is really important for artists to consider because you're trading one middleman for another. So anyone that's attempted to post on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube will understand at any point in time they can take your video down for no reason. Or sometimes, you know, there might be a reason, but they don't give you a warning. Um, they the algorithms are really hard to understand and they're not transparent. They will never reveal what the algorithms are, and they change all the time. B- And above all else, they basically own your data, and there's nothing you can do about it. Web3 is the next evolution of the internet, and that's one in which you can also own on the digital side of things. You can truly own digital items. You can own your identity. You can own achievements. Tied to interacting with digital playgrounds like websites, and you're not just borrowing them from platforms. It kind of unlocks a new model of participation, of reward and of creativity without needing permission from a platform. And that's the important thing. So basically, it's like ownership is recorded on a public database that no single company controls. And it's kind of like a digital ledger that anyone can verify, but no one can secretly change. And in Web 2, Facebook at any time, and it's doing it all the time, now Meta, they can change whatever they want. Steam can do it. Um, if you guys have ever rented a video on or bought a video on PlayStation Network or on Amazon Prime, you don't actually own that video because tomorrow, if they decide they're not hosting that movie anymore, sorry, you were actually renting it for the period of time at which it was on the platform. Web3 will change all of that. Um, so hopefully that was a little bit clearer. I know it's very technical, but the point is it's just a continuation of the internet with newer and better tools at our disposal to create better experiences for consumers, and creators actually. Like David was using the analogy of car keys. You own your car keys, and for creators like ourselves, it's extremely empowering. So our objective with Claynosaurz was always like to pioneer new ways to empower creators like ourselves, and in the future other creators and audiences at the same time. And that was always our drive as a creator-led company. Um, like Dave was talking about, and like even Jorge mentioned yesterday, there's an issue with mainstream entertainment today, and the simple fact is that it's broken. And I know that a lot of you guys are feeling that this year, and you can feel it. The animation industry is a little bit, there are weird things happening. Some of that may get fixed over time. But a big problem is actually, like Dave was saying, is the entertainment landscape is more competitive than it's ever been, and distribution is democratized. You can upload things to YouTube. I think there's like 30 million hours of videos uploaded to YouTube every week, which is insane. Box office is on a downtrend. That's not just because of COVID. COVID made it happen faster, but the extinction of box office was always going to happen with the streaming bubble because streamers, it's direct to your home, and all they do is they make more and more content, and in an attempt for you to retain, like, to keep paying for your account, right? But there's not much of a box office event, and that's going to keep going on the downtrend. Um, but above everything is like there's no barriers to content making. So like Dave was saying, it's not easy to make CG, but it's definitely easier than it was even 5 years ago. And there's like free software, and you've got kids. I think there's like a 14-year-old that was making this year and last year and the year before was making like Lego fan videos that looked like it was straight up the Lego movie, and the kid was like 14 years old. Incredible work. Um, and you can do that straight from your home. And even 12 years ago, that was really tough to do. So the barriers to entry are really small. And then you've got cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And so when 9-year-old kids can be in their basements and they can upload a video on a Friday night that will outperform Netflix's like Friday release movie, there's a little bit of a problem. And this is something we were thinking about when we built Claynosaurz. The Another analogy I can give you guys is like, how often do you sit in front of Netflix and you're just like trying to pick what you're gonna watch, and you probably spend more time picking than actually watching something. We basically have choice anxiety, and if you're gonna commit your time, usually it's a friend that's gonna say you got to watch Arcane. Like, trust me, go watch Arcane, and that's why you're gonna watch Arcane, right? And for studios, it's always a hit or miss strategy. You're investing like millions into a movie, and you don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if it's going to be sticky, and they're building movies behind the curtains. They very rarely show the process. They very rarely celebrate the creators while they're building the thing. And it's the same for AAA video games. So it's a really risky business, which is why, like Jorge was saying yesterday, they're not taking risks on new properties. They're doing more Star Wars. They're doing Marvel 976, and you're seeing less and less fresh content. The irony is audiences want more fresh content. Um, AI is of course going to make the oversaturation of bad content even more prevalent, which means like fresh content is actually going to become more and more important. Um, so what we wanted to do with Claynos is kind of do a new approach on how you can go to market and how you can build an IP for yourself, leveraging new technologies, but also leveraging just a new tactic, which is community driven, which I see a lot of creators are now starting to do. Kudos to the Steamroller guys right now. It's incredible what they're doing. Agora as well is doing that with a lot of their social media content, which is amazing to see. You're seeing so many creators start to go into different distribution channels. So what's the first thing we did? Well, after we released our first collectibles, uh, we made our first, and we like to be very transparent with the numbers. We made our first $1.3 million. And you got to imagine that for a group of artists, it was a very, very big deal. And the choice we had was to allocate that money to actually building our brand. Of course, we continued to make royalties over time, and we made another over 3 years, $6 million of royalties. And all of that money was injected into building our studio, and doing the moves that we felt was going to grow a brand for ourselves. It's extremely empowering for artists. It's not easy, but you can imagine that what we're empowered to do is, instead of doing work for other people, and instead of taking on vendor type work, like, okay, we're going to take a chunk of a VFX movie just to make money so that we can then put that money into building our brand. We don't do any of that. We basically, we just work on Claynosaurz. Um, and the first thing we did was social media content. That was really important. You got to meet the audiences where they're at. And we had a social media first approach because, like Dave was saying, it's way easier to take a risk on 10-second clips. Nobody has attention spans, and you got to earn the right to do long form content and hook people. So many young people today they're basically doom scrolling all the time, and they don't have a lot of attention spans. Of course, some of them will take some time to watch like maybe a 30-minute episode, but for the most part, you got to get them familiar with your brand, and that was what we wanted to do. w- the great thing is, if you're doing social media for animation, you can also treat it as a test kitchen. We're kind of figuring out what works, what doesn't, what are some things about the Claynosaurz that are sticky? What are some things that people really like? And then when we kind of analyze our clips and we figure out what works, we lean heavy into it. And all of that stuff is essentially a test kitchen for us to refine the brand and to kind of inject things that are interesting and get a bigger fan base until we're ready for longer form content. We keep everything organic and we avoid clickbait type content. Sometimes we do, we'll do like dances. We rarely do trends, but we'll do dance trends. The reason we do dance trends is because it's basically like a cameo and it's evergreen content. Like a dance you can reuse for all sorts of things. So we do a lot of that stuff, but really we want to tell stories. And your job, even if you're doing fast paced content on social media, your goal is always to get people to fall in love with the characters. Your goal is not to get as many views as possible as fast as you can. It's to find your tribe. Um, and and it's gone pretty well in the last 2 years. So our accounts have gone ballistic. We've won awards next to Spider Verse, next to Ninja Turtles, next to Riot Games and Valorant and all those guys. And recently we just won a Webby Award, which is huge. And last year we won some Collision Awards, which was amazing. And it's been a crazy journey for the artists and for ourselves. Entertainment's non-linear, and sorry guys, I'm going fast because I see the time's running out. Entertainment's not linear, so you got to meet the fans where they're at. And what we're doing is we're building what we call a transmedia brand, and we build different pillars. We're building product, we're building media, which is the content and animation that you guys are used to. It could be comics as well. It could be all sorts of things that tell stories. And there's gaming. And the reason we do that is because a lot of kids will discover a brand somewhere. I say kids, but it's actually true for a lot of people. They'll discover a brand through one vertical, and then they'll choose to stay with that brand in other places. In the case of children, they might be playing a game, they love that brand, and then they're not allowed to play the game because they spent too many hours on it. What do they do next? They go on YouTube and they watch stuff about that game, or they watch episodes about that brand, or they watch streamers. If and then when they're not allowed screen time, then what do? They'll interact with physicals. What we're doing is we're combining all those verticals together and we're gluing them with digital experiences along the way. Um, we're now working with Gameloft, which has been really cool, and we're making a mobile game, and a lot of that is tied to our entire ecosystem. So if you collect our, so we did some. So what's really cool is actually all of those dinos in that scene is they're some of our collectors and some of our community members online. Oftentimes we look at like their personalities and we try to inject that in the characters, but it was really special for like key collectors to have their dinosaur show up on content, and we can do. That's another really fun value prop for NFTs. Of course, we do plushies, we do physical products, but they all have digital loops, so we can blend the physical and the digital worlds into a really fun experience. And you can collect more stuff by collecting physical products, or you can extend the life cycle of a physical product because now you have other experiences tied to it and other collectibles and things like that. um, we recently we kind of revealed that we're finally working on our TV show. So now we're ready for long form content. As
Mhm.
artists, we've accrued a lot of leverage for ourselves, and we've been very fortunate in that we've been approached by so many companies that have been looking at this stuff and very impressed. And we'll be announcing the partners either end of next week or the week after that, which really exciting for us. Um, we've been working on artwork for 3 years and trying to figure out what the world building would look like. And one of the things that we do is we're extremely transparent with that stuff. We post making of content. A lot of it's on Twitter or inside our Discord channels, but it's very rare that we like keep things hidden. Like we usually just kind of we just show everything. Like, we don't care, unless there's like an NDA. We what we do is we show this stuff. We show building in the open, all the artwork we're working on, and oftentimes our community and our fans will have so many like fun comments, and then might come up with some really unique ideas. And then if those ideas are amazing, we'll just leverage them. And we can also reward through the NFTs. We can reward those fans that are interacting with the brand, or that are giving us ideas. We can reward them with either other collectibles. There's a million things that we can do. um, we show a lot of, which I know that Agora does as well. We show a lot of kind of like office meetings, all that kind of stuff, meetings on how we tackle social media, all the kind of fun stuff, meetings with Gameloft. We're really trying to build in the open and be as transparent as we can, so that our fans can, they have early inclusion. They're there from the start. They're part of the journey, um, and they see what we're building. We have held, again, I'm going super fast. We've held events all over the world, for our fans, some of which have had 1,500 attendees. And at those events, what we often do is we will provide other digital collectibles that are exclusive to that event. Those collectibles might be tradable, they might not, but the way we look at it is a few things. Primarily, it's storytelling units. So when we release a new collectible, usually we're testing a new character, or we're testing something special of the lore. We gauge what people are saying. It might be mysterious, and we always build content around it. If you guys remember, and still today, what they do, Clash of Clans and Supercell, every time they have an excuse to tell a story, they do it. Even if it's just a simple game patch, they'll release atomized content, which is what we do. And every time we release a new collectible, we're empowered to do that. So here's an example where, oh, I guess it's just a screenshot because I uploaded this wrong. If you go on YouTube, oh, no, it's not.
It's good. We just don't have the sound, but it's all good, so you can talk over it.
So we had released a digital sardine can for free.
Nice.
Sorry, we had released a sardine can, and we released a lot of funny food groups, but it was an exclusive collectible for very specific attendees of an event we had in Lisbon. And that eventually, that sardine can became, it attracted the dactyls, and so we created content around that. And sorry, I see there's 15 minutes or maybe less now to submit, so I know it's scary. um, and so the fun part is those collectibles become modular storytelling units and give us an excuse to build content, but provide the users or the diehard collectors with extra collectibles. And because it's in Web3 and it's on chain, you're not just writing their user journey. It's preserved and it's completely transparent. It's kind of like the SIGGRAPH RenderMan teapot, but on absolute steroids. Um, so I'm going to speed through this part. How do we leverage NFTs in a really interesting way? Well, right now we've just released our beta version of the achievement system. Over time, that engine will grow, but it has many verticals. It can reward users for the way in which they collect. It could reward users in the way for the way in which they interact with our gaming ecosystem. So your classic gaming achievements, but it also rewards users for the way in which they create user generated content or content for a brand. Um, and that's coming up really soon. Of course, we'll be leveraging certain APIs, things like YouTube and Instagram. But the point is, if you're creating content for a brand, so if you're an animator and you have access to our rigs and you're creating content online, we can reward you with exclusive badges that are soulbound that eventually turn into collectibles. We can reward you with tokens, with things like that. In the future, there's so much that we can do. And so it kind of creates this like collector's universe, but it also creates an engine for participation for the fans that do want to participate and get points for that participation. And um, and the badges that you get, because they have a Web3 layer, they're digital mementos. So they preserve that moment in time. It's kind of like if you guys used to like check in on Facebook, like, hey, I just checked in, I'm at this airport. Only that is like, it's on chain, and it can never be changed, and so forth. Um, I think I'm gonna basically stop there because maybe there's gonna be questions. We
Yep.
are about to expand soon with the new characters. It's how we build collectibles. We design everything, concept art, all that kind of stuff. We look at everything from a storytelling POV. And I just wanted to say that we are building a model that can kind of recreate what worked really well for Claynosaurz, and we'd love to extend that to other creators that would love to build their brands.
Nick, are you still there?
Yeah,
Okay.
do you hear me?
Yeah. You just stopped abruptly. I was like,
Oh yeah, because I was
is he
like
muted?
speeding up through. I was
Is he
like
done?
looking at the time. I
Okay.
promise you that
I had
it wasn't.
25 questions, and I'll have time to
Let's go
go
fast.
through none of them. Okay. Super quickly, you talked about user content generation. Um, can we super rapidly talk
Yep.
about a new rig? Okay, so we've been working with Claynosaurz, and there's a new character rigs that will be released on Agora community shortly for anyone that is interested to animate this cute little character. Nick, I give you a challenge of you have 1 minute to describe the character and what kind of content you think that will be created with it. 1 minute.
Yeah. Let's go. So it's a baby Rex. At Annecy, we're going to be releasing all these different color skews and versions of this baby Rex for the students that attend our event. We have a big event at NSE, by the way. So come see us. Uh, yeah, it's a baby Rex, super, super cute. We'd love to see dances and evergreen type short stories with it. There's going to be an animation challenge that the Agora team is going to announce pretty soon, and so of course there'll be guidelines there. But for the most part, make whatever content that you see fit, and keep in mind that we're building a system for you guys to use that rig, be able to log into our achievement system, and as you make animated content, you'll be rewarded over time with certain digital collectibles, and with a bunch of other reward loops in there for creators. So I'm super super excited about that. I'm actually trying to find a picture of this thing.
Awesome. So as you're looking at a picture, there's one question that I really wanted to ask. So for anyone in the audience, I like, hey, I'd like also to create my own characters, my own world, and start to share and have some success on social media. Because you guys have been sharing the Claynosaurz and analyzed,
Yeah.
the shit out of what is working, what is not working. What would be, let's say, the top tips that you would have in terms of what type of content to create for someone that would increase the chance that they're going to reach a broad audience rapidly in terms of content itself? What kind of character, animation, colors, whatever?
Yeah. Cute. Okay, so cute works really well, of course, and weird works really well. If you look at what Digital Circus is doing and Glitch, weird works. I would say find your voice. Um, Try not to go too long. 10 seconds is really good. Like Dave was talking about, loops are actually really powerful because if you can get the viewer to not even know that they've watched it twice, it does help the algorithm. In terms of colors, we go super scientific. So it's like if we have a song that's like a K-pop song and we do a dance, then we will actually try to figure out like what are the popular colors that really resonate with people in Korea, for example. Like we treat it like a science, but for the most part, I say bright colors work really well. Why do they work well? Because you have to realize that for people that are scrolling fast on socials, you have to hook them with a few things: visual interest, an action that happens basically in the first second, or some sort of text-based, call to action that keeps them from scrolling to the next video. So color is actually really important, and something that's just like, whoa, what is this, right? Or it gets right into the action. So I would say that focus on evergreen content. Stay away from trends. Like make people fall in love with your characters. Tell stories.
Yeah, awesome. All right, a quick one from chat. So, with the Claynosaurz animated series and game already in the work, what core message or vibe do you hope audience and players walk away with after experiencing the Clinotopia?
Sorry, repeat the last part.
Yes. What core message or vibe do you hope audience and players walk away with after experiencing the Clinotopia?
Oh, I mean, the core message is we want the content to be extremely wholesome. Like that's something. And then the core message of the company is like, you know, you you don't need the studio system. The world is changing, and you can take back control for yourselves, and you can do it. And honestly, like, I remember when we started this journey, it was like the feeling felt impossible. And actually, I know, like, it must have felt the same for you and just Agora, right?
Mhm.
And it feels impossible until it's not. And you gotta persevere, which is ironic because that's what Jorge was talking about. You just gotta be very consistent, and it's not gonna work out right away, but then at some point it will. So
Yeah,
that would be the message is you can totally do it.
yeah. And again, about the IP itself, what are you hoping that people would get the emotion of the vibe when they think about Clenosaur? Because when I think about Arcane, I have a very specific feeling in mind. When I think about
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, I do. What do you think that for Clenosaur it would be?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, like, wholesome and quirky. Very much like when you think of SpongeBob, you do think that. It's like it's a mix of weird. Um, at the very least, that's what we're working on for the TV show. But it's oh man, like, those are dinos like I haven't seen before, right?
Mm,
Like, I find people always make dinosaurs kind of the same thing, and in this case, we're trying to avoid that.
yeah. All right, everyone. 3 minutes left to submit your animation. Rapid fire. Nick, you mentioned being a fan of Jurassic Park. Is
Oh no.
Clenosaur the new incarnation of dinosaur? Is there any link between your love for dinosaurs and
Is there
Clenosaur?
any link? Of course there's a link. Yeah, I think everybody on the team was like dinosaur nerds. And I know the Triceratops is not technically a Triceratops and the Bronto is not technically a Bronto. But yeah, a lot of us were just everybody likes dinos. And I think that strategically w- we knew there was a gap in in kind of reinventing IP in the dinosaur space. Jurassic World reinvigorated the franchise, but also reinvigorated kind of like that whole how kind of in demand dinosaur brands are. And we wanted something that was toyetic, but we also wanted something that speaks to like every culture. Um, People like you grow up and you're fascinated by them. And then we wanted to create like a collectible version of dinos, which we hadn't seen. Like, we were asking ourselves, like, digitally, like, what if you could do what Funko Pop did, or like even Cabbage Patch Kids or Pop Mart, but you do it for dinosaurs.
Awesome. Okay, another rapid fire. Favorite pumpkin?
So okay, so anybody that doesn't know, this is for sure a community member asking. For anybody that doesn't know, that's our
Can you bring
second.
them back? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you had the design in the presentation, right?
yeah. Let me actually let me show you guys something even cooler. So I'm gonna look this up. And I'm gonna share my screen. But essentially, these are our new collectibles. And am I in the right folders? It's gonna be the new kind of like master expansion that we have, and these are basically our Pokemon type characters. And I would say this is one of my favorites. Is the little manta ray, and the way he or she is animated is so cute. Um, I don't have it easy access on this computer. I'd have to go through Shotgun, but they're they're really adorable. And so we have 25,000 of these collectibles about to be released on, I believe it's Friday actually. And I know I gave you some packs to give
Yep.
out,
Yep.
Dave Agora, but um, this would be one of my favorites because it's just too damn cute. But they're all super cute. They're very like Pokemon esque, and these are the Popkins.
Super cute. Um, what about your original collection? Favorite Kleno?
Oh my god, I'm a Rex guy. It's okay. Wait, that's a lie. Dinos overall, I always loved raptors, but with the Clano collection, I think it's Rex, and I really like the Stegos.
Uh, Favorite skin or color or anyone one specifically that stands out to you?
I think Toxic is just is one of my favorite skins. I collect Jurassic skins just because it's called Jurassic. I like what it looks like, and it's kind of like the classic dinosaur skin. But I do
Yeah,
love Toxic, which is
yeah,
actually similar to what you guys are seeing here in the Popkin skins.
awesome. All right, let's go a little bit over if you have a few more minutes as
Oh
people are
yeah, yeah.
scrambling
I know
to.
people are posting, so
Yeah,
yeah, it's
exactly.
Sunday. I can stick around. It's fine.
Exactly. There's a lot of people like, God, why is my submission not working? So let's go for a few more minutes to entertain the crowd. Super selfish question. You mentioned something that is very interesting that we're doing as well, which is, sharing as you go. And this is kind of against what most studios are doing, which is keep everything completely hidden. And the reason was always because when you're going to do your marketing, you want to show something that has never been seen before, so you're going to maximize the view of the audience. And then so
Yeah,
basically a super rigid and clear marketing strategy that is not at all in the hands of the creators. And what we're doing and you're doing as well is more like, no, let's just share as we go, and just to create more and more interest into what we're doing. What was the rationale for you guys to do it this way? Was it just again a happy accident, or was a very conscious decision to do it? And why did you choose this approach?
super conscious. I think the fear of studios is a few things. Like you say, they don't want to hurt the end game marketing campaign. The irony is they depend so much on that marketing campaign, which oftentimes is costs the same amount of money as the as the making of budget. Um, and push marketing doesn't actually work. And that was actually the inspiration. Is push marketing doesn't work anymore. Um, I drew a lot of inspiration from. I grew up with DVDs and Blu-ray, and I was obsessed with making ofs. And somewhere along the line, they stopped doing it. Even the making ofs became kind of just weird and like usually like a 2 minute thing when it used to be like 30-minute making of you know videos. And I remember being obsessed with books on Star Wars and how they made those movies and whatever. But if you remember Lord, for anyone that was there when they were making Lord of the Rings or before they
Oh
had
yeah,
released the Lord of the Rings movies,
I had
yeah,
exactly this example in mind. I was
the One
like,
Ring dot
there.
net, yeah. So so one of the first times this was, and the only times this was ever done historically correctly, and probably one of the reasons that Lord of the Rings worked the way it did, because at the time fantasy movies were not doing well. Like you know whatever, they weren't doing that well. But Peter Jackson was signing up to do the three movies for Lord of the Rings, and Weta Digital was doing it, and nobody knew those guys, and nobody really knew Peter Jackson. And there was a website called the OneRing.net, and he had these production journals where a few times per week he would upload, or they would upload literally like footage from on set, and you would get to know Vigo better. You would get to know how the actor that does Aragorn loved the horses so much on set that he adopted both of them. You would get to see how they were making the armor. You were so invested in the people that were making the movie that you actually cared less about the movie itself, and you went to go see the movie to support that team. But then when you watched the movie, you were so invested in the movie because you felt like like it was already family. Like it was a weird feeling. This lasted like 2 years. Like it was insane. They've never done this ever again. And the fact that he got the green light to be so transparent, like I remember when they were making Golem, and Andy Serkis was kind of like was nobody knew who Andy was at the time, and they made this huge multi-part series and videos showing Andy in the suit and acting like a frog and like hurting himself in the river and chasing a fish that wasn't there. And man, like that idea of building in the open was so powerful that we were like, why shouldn't you do it that way? There's nothing wrong with with revealing stuff people know is happening anyways. You know, you're world building, you're creating new buildings, new characters, all that kind of stuff. You're showing what's life like at the office. And part of the other fear from it's it's also from, you know, I think it's you're afraid to, of course, like you don't want to ruin you know, the marketing campaign, but you also don't want people to copycat you. And we don't really care about that. Like sometimes we'll show storyboards of our reels, and so we get asked this question a lot. It's like, aren't you afraid someone else is going to make that video before you do? And we're like, so what? Like, they won't execute it as best we can. We've already posted the storyboard online. So even if someone beat us to the animation of it, it's like we can always say, well, look, ours was online before. Um, but, you know, it really doesn't matter much to us. The only times we don't show something is if we're working with a partner and or there's an actual surprise that's really fun that we don't want to ruin. Aside from that, sure, copycat us. Like
Yeah.
we have confidence in our ability to execute better.
Yeah, yeah, I remember this Lord of the Ring. I never read the book, never, let's say, was a fan of medieval, or let's say this kind of universe. But those making of that were released made me kind of fall in love with the story of the cast and just the filmmaking of this project. And I was eager to go and watch it on cinema, because at that point it's been at least a year that I was fed with the story. And I know that we didn't had time to cover anything about AI, but I believe that more and more the story and the people behind the art are going to be part of the story itself, and this is what is going to provide um, value to any new IP that is created. It's not just going to be about the character and the world anymore. It's going to be a big part of it, but another big part of it is where is it coming from? Who's working on those? Who are those people that are creating this thing that I find appealing? And that's something that AI is not going to replace. What is the story of the real artist that actually did this, which is going to be way more a big layer of what it's interesting when there's a sea of content that is distributed.
100% human made is going to be a thing. AI is something, you know, it's coming. We can't avoid it. I think it's understanding how to exist within that and how to leverage it in the ways that make sense. But this idea of human made is going to be so powerful, and it's always very cyclical. I know you and I, we were talking about this, the analogy of like even restaurants. Like at some point it was all like franchises and McDonald's and Chipotle's and whatever, and or like over the top like Michelin clean restaurants, and now it's back to like the rustic, like human kind of like indie type restaurants that people like to go to. I know it's maybe a weird analogy, but I think
Yeah.
there's some parallels there.
No, totally. I see great restaurants that no one is there, and others that are filled every night. And it's the story of what people think about when they think about this restaurant that is actually filling the place. Nick, that was awesome. Thanks for being very generous with your time on a Sunday morning, afternoon, like we are. We could have
Super happy to do
continued
that.
for 2 more hours. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's my bad.
yeah. No, I could have continued for sure. Yeah, and I'm glad that we showed a little bit of the let's say behind the curtain of Claynosaurz to our audience here. The submission. So thanks a lot, Nick, and I'll know that we'll see each other pretty soon. And congrats again for all the success of Claynosaurz. And I know that the future is pretty bright as well. So that's we're going to continue to share what is going on this side as we go.
Oh my god, submissions are closed. I got nervous.
Yes. We are closed.
Dude, thanks for having me. I'm probably seeing you Thursday. And super stoked to do this, and I'll definitely do it again and keep it as concise as possible, which is basically impossible for me.
Yep.
And yeah, good luck everybody with your submissions.
Yep.
It's a crazy thing to do this for 24 hours. I'm stoked to see what you guys come up with, because it's not a lot of time to do a full shot, but a really good exercise on keeping things concise.
Yep. Thanks, Nick. And as Nick briefly mentioned, stay tuned, because there's definitely a Clayno that will be accessible to animators, and definitely another Anim challenge with it. So we're going to announce this shortly. All right, Nick, I'm going to let you go. Thanks again for showing up.